Let me ask you something. How did an ordinary, unimpressive ape become the most powerful force on the planet? I mean, look around. Skyscrapers, the internet, space travel. We sapiens built all of this. But it wasn't always like that. In fact, for most of history, we were just another animal on the food chain, somewhere between lions and hyenas. Yuval Noah Harari's Sapiens takes us on an epic journey through the rise of Homo sapiens, how we went from being just another species of ape to ruling the world. And it's not just a story about survival, it's about imagination, power, and how myths, beliefs, and stories shaped history. Today, we're going to break it down, the key moments that made us who we are. From the moment we learned to tell stories, to the birth of farming, the rise of empires, and the revolutions that shaped the modern world. But here's the twist. Our greatest strengths, like storytelling, cooperation, and ambition, also created some of our greatest dangers. Harari asks an uncomfortable question. As the masters of the earth, are we building a better future or our own downfall? Let's dive in. And where better to start than with the first leap that set it all in motion, the cognitive revolution. Imagine this. It's 70,000 years ago. The earth is wild and untamed. Forests stretch endlessly. Predators lurk in the shadows. And humans, well, they're not exactly kings of the jungle. Yet something extraordinary is about to happen. Something that will change history forever. The cognitive revolution. It wasn't just a new way of thinking, it was a superpower. For the first time, Homo sapiens weren't limited to reacting to their surroundings. They could imagine, plan, dream, and believe. Suddenly, humans could tell stories. They could pass on knowledge about dangerous beasts and hidden water sources. They could warn about betrayals or make alliances with strangers by whispering promises of shared ancestors or divine protection. Gossip, legends, and myths became the glue holding groups together. Why does this matter? Because before stories, humans could only trust family or small groups they knew well. But now, they could unite by the hundreds, thousands, because they believed in something bigger than themselves. The Neanderthals were stronger, tougher even. But they couldn't tell stories about gods, ancestors, or heroes. Sapiens? They created entire worlds in their minds. And with that, they became unstoppable. And language wasn't just for survival. It was entertainment, inspiration, a way to belong. Yes, storytelling gave humans an edge. They could imagine a better future, make plans for tomorrow, and warn each other about betrayal today. But more importantly, they could convince others to follow their lead, all by sharing a common story. In the blink of an evolutionary eye, sapiens went from small, scattered tribes to dominating the planet. And here's the kicker. It wasn't because of sharper claws, bigger muscles, or even better tools. It was because they could believe in things they'd never seen and convince others to do the same. From Africa to the Middle East to Europe and Asia, sapiens spread like wildfire, outthinking and outlasting every rival species. Neanderthals, Denisovans, giant predators, all of them eventually disappeared. The first paintings, the first rituals, the first prayers to invisible beings. This was where it all began. The birth of culture, religion, and storytelling. And it all came from one spark, imagination. Humans didn't just survive, they thrived because they believed, they told stories. And that, my friends, is why you and I are here today. Next came the agricultural revolution. Roughly 10,000 years ago, something happened that changed the course of history forever. Humans, who had spent hundreds of thousands of years as hunter-gatherers, following the rhythms of nature, moving with the seasons, suddenly decided to settle down. They began planting crops, raising animals, and staying in one place. Sounds like a great upgrade, right? This shift was a double-edged sword. On one hand, farming provided food surpluses, which meant more food for more people. Populations exploded, villages became towns, and towns grew into cities. Humanity was building a new kind of world, one of stability and growth. But here's the catch. Those surpluses came at a price. Farming wasn't easy. It required backbreaking labor, plowing, sowing, harvesting, day after day, year after year. And unlike hunting and gathering, which gave humans a varied diet, farmers depended heavily on a few staple crops, wheat, rice, barley. If the harvest failed, people starved. Harari even calls it history's biggest fraud. Why? Because humans didn't choose farming for freedom. It trapped them. They went from being free-roaming nomads to being tied to a piece of land, working longer and harder than ever before. Think about it. A hunter-gatherer might spend a few hours a day gathering food and then rest, explore, or play. But farmers? They had to wake up before dawn and toil until sunset to keep their crops alive. And if they didn't, famine. And it wasn't just harder work. Farming created something else, inequality. Suddenly you had people who owned land, and people who didn't. Those who had fertile land could grow surpluses and trade for wealth. Others, less fortunate, became dependent or even enslaved. Society wasn't just growing, it was dividing. And that's not all. With large settlements came new problems. Diseases spread like wildfire, trash piled up, conflicts over land became common. And since everyone lived closer to animals, new zoonotic diseases like smallpox and measles jumped to humans. But here's the crazy part. Despite all this, humans didn't turn back. The promise of stability and control over their food supply was too tempting. They built villages, towns, cities, and entire civilizations. Farming became the foundation of everything we know today: laws, religions, armies, and wealth. Harari poses a fascinating question. Did humans domesticate wheat, or did wheat domesticate humans? Think about it. Wheat spread across the globe, growing in vast fields, thanks to human effort. In a way, it tricked us into nurturing it, spreading its seeds, and dedicating our entire lives to its survival. Kind of makes you wonder who really won that deal, doesn't it? So, was the agricultural revolution a triumph or a trap? Maybe a bit of both. What's undeniable is that it set the stage for everything that came next. Great empires, towering cities, and of course the challenges of inequality and environmental destruction that we're still grappling with today. And that's just the beginning. Let's see what happens when these early farmers start building kingdoms and creating myths to justify their power. Spoiler alert, it's about to get complicated. Despite the backbreaking toil and the inequalities brought by the agricultural revolution, it set the stage for something even bigger: the rise of kingdoms, empires, and civilizations. Suddenly, humans weren't just living in small villages. They were building cities, nations, and vast empires. But here's the question. How did millions of strangers, people who had never met and had no personal ties, cooperate peacefully? The answer? Shared stories. Harari explains that humans are the only species capable of organizing large groups by believing in shared myths. Stories that give meaning and structure to our lives. Religion, culture, legal systems. These weren't just rules. They were narratives that convinced people to play their part in something bigger. Take religion, for example. When ancient civilizations told stories about gods watching over them, they weren't just explaining the mysteries of life. They were creating bonds. If everyone believed that a divine power demanded justice, sacrifice, or obedience, entire societies could work together, even during hardship. And it wasn't just religion. Monarchies spun tales about divine right, the idea that kings and queens were chosen by the gods to rule. And later, nations emerged with stories of homeland, honor, and patriotism. These myths united people who might have had little in common otherwise. But here's the thing. While these imagined orders brought unity and stability, they also came with a darker side. Empires often justified conquest and domination by claiming divine approval. Religious doctrines were used to justify wars. Entire civilizations accepted social hierarchies, slavery, oppression, and exploitation because they believed it was part of the natural or divine order. Millions of people lived and died for stories they believed in. Sometimes these stories inspired hope and progress. Other times they fueled greed, war, and destruction. Take the Roman Empire. The legions that marched across Europe believed they were spreading the peace of Rome, civilization itself. But for those being conquered, it often meant enslavement and destruction. But before we judge too harshly, remember even today we're surrounded by imagined orders, money, corporations, human rights, national borders. These are all stories we've agreed to believe in. Without them, modern society wouldn't function. So, what does this tell us? The power of belief isn't just about faith, it's about survival. Shared myths have built the greatest civilizations and unleashed humanity's greatest tragedies. It all depends on the story we choose to tell, and as civilizations grew stronger and more unified, they set the stage for something extraordinary, the dawn of science and exploration. Let's see what happens when humans stop looking to the heavens for answers and start experimenting with the world around them. Now this is where things get really interesting. The scientific revolution. About 500 years ago, humanity took a bold leap forward. Unlike earlier eras where the mysteries of the world were explained through myths, religions, or divine will, this period was all about something new: curiosity, observation, and experimentation. For the first time, humans began to say, what if we don't know everything? What if we test it, measure it, prove it? Instead of accepting ancient stories as truth, they started using the scientific method, asking questions, conducting experiments, and letting the evidence speak for itself. Take Galileo Galilei, for example. While many believed the Earth was the center of the universe because that's what religious doctrine taught, Galileo pointed his telescope to the stars and said, wait a minute. He discovered that planets orbited the sun, not the Earth. And that shook the foundations of belief at the time. But science wasn't just about the stars, it was about life on Earth. People started studying medicine, biology, physics, and chemistry. They built new tools, microscopes, compasses, and clocks to measure the world with astonishing precision. Suddenly, humanity wasn't at the mercy of nature anymore. We had the power to manipulate it. And you know what happens when humans get power? We expand, fast. Scientific breakthroughs didn't stay in the lab. They reshaped economies and fueled empires. Nations like Britain and Spain used advancements in navigation, shipbuilding, and map-making to launch massive global exploration efforts. Empires expanded across oceans, claiming territories and building trade networks that spanned the world. But this new knowledge came at a cost. Scientific discoveries gave empires the tools to dominate and conquer. Ships didn't just carry spices and trade goods, they carried soldiers, cannons, and diseases. The same scientific curiosity that built magnificent cities also justified colonialism, exploitation, and destruction. Harari points out that capitalism and science became deeply intertwined. Empires didn't just explore for the sake of knowledge, they invested in discovery for profit. The promise of riches from newly charted lands drove innovation and expansion. Scientists needed funding, and financiers needed discoveries. And let's be honest, adventurers weren't just sailing into the unknown for glory. They were chasing gold, spices, and resources that would make them and their backers rich beyond their wildest dreams. But here's the twist. The scientific revolution wasn't just about greed or conquest. It also changed the way humans understood their place in the universe. Suddenly, we weren't just subjects of fate. We were creators, inventors, explorers. It's the moment when humanity began asking, not just, why are we here? But what can we do with the world we've been given? And as humans unlocked the secrets of the natural world, they also unlocked incredible new possibilities and terrifying new powers. So what comes next? The age of empires and the rise of capitalism. Let's see how science and ambition reshaped the entire planet and changed the course of history forever. Capitalism, the economic engine of the modern world. But what is it really? Most people think capitalism is just about markets, businesses, and making money. But according to Harari, it's about something much deeper: faith. Not in gods or kings, but in something surprising: the future. Let me explain. In order for capitalism to work, people have to believe that tomorrow will be better than today. That's what drives investment, innovation, and trade. Think about it. When a company takes out a loan to build a factory, they're betting that future profits will be worth more than the risk today. This faith in growth is what keeps the wheels of capitalism turning. But here's the genius and the danger of it. Capitalism made people believe that by investing now, they could create a better future. And in many ways, it worked. It funded scientific discoveries, global trade routes, and technological revolutions. Suddenly, humanity wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. By the 18th and 19th centuries, banks, stock markets, and industrial factories had become the heart of the economy. Money wasn't just a tool, it became a way to create more money. Investors poured capital into new inventions, and with each innovation, societies transformed. Railroads, steam engines, and electricity redefined what humans could achieve. But here's the flip side. Capitalism also came with a cost, a big one. With the promise of endless growth came relentless competition and exploitation. Powerful companies began prioritizing profits above all else, often at the expense of people and the environment. Workers in factories toiled for long hours in harsh conditions, while the wealth generated flowed upward to the few. Entire regions of the world were colonized and stripped of resources to fuel the growing global market. And that's not all. To keep the system going, capitalism thrives on consumption. People have to keep buying and upgrading. But what happens when resources run out? What happens when the planet itself can't keep up with our endless hunger for more? Harari argues that capitalism reshaped our values too. Instead of asking, what's enough? Societies began asking, what's next? Growth became the measure of success, and standing still was seen as failure. But let's give credit where it's due. Capitalism has driven incredible innovation. From modern medicine to global connectivity, many of the comforts we enjoy today wouldn't exist without it. It turned individual ambition into a force that changed the world. The challenge, however, is that capitalism doesn't know when to stop. It's like a train with no brakes, powerful and fast but potentially dangerous if it veers off course. So where does that leave us? Harari suggests that capitalism isn't just an economic system, it's a story about progress, hope, and prosperity. But it's up to us to decide whether that story leads to a brighter future or leaves us hurtling toward disaster. And speaking of global stories, what happens when this relentless drive for growth collides with human cultures, beliefs, and nations? Let's take a look at the rise of globalization and the complex web of connections that now binds humanity together. Picture this: massive ships setting sail across uncharted oceans, carrying explorers, merchants, and soldiers to distant lands. With science and capitalism as their fuel, European empires began expanding their dominance across the globe. And they weren't just spreading goods, they were spreading power, culture, and control. This was the age of empires. Nations like Britain, Spain, and Portugal didn't just explore for the sake of adventure, they were driven by the promise of wealth and glory. They established colonies, claimed vast territories, and imposed their languages, religions, and economic systems on entire continents. But beneath the surface of grand discoveries was a brutal reality. The colonization of the Americas alone led to the deaths of millions of indigenous people through war, enslavement, and disease. Empires didn't ask for permission, they took what they wanted. Lands were seized, cultures were suppressed, and ancient traditions were wiped away, often in the name of civilization. But here's where things get complicated. While empires caused immense destruction, they also created something new: globalization. Harari explains that globalization wasn't just about goods like spices, silver, and silk. It spread ideas, beliefs, and technologies across the world. Trade routes became information highways. Printing presses spread scientific knowledge. Missionaries spread religions. Over time, humans started seeing themselves not just as part of local tribes or kingdoms, but as part of a shared, interconnected world. And it wasn't just European empires doing the spreading. Eastern empires like the Ottomans, Mughals, and Qing dynasty also influenced global culture. Textiles from India, tea from China, and Islamic scholarship from the Middle East flowed through global markets. The world was becoming smaller and more connected, but make no mistake, this connection wasn't always equal. Many parts of the world were forced into this global system through violence and exploitation. Entire societies became part of an economic machine that benefited the powerful few. And yet, globalization also created surprising bonds. Music, cuisine, and traditions blended in ways that shaped modern culture. Coffee from Ethiopia met sugar from the Caribbean, and new rituals were born. Scientific ideas that started in one corner of the world found new life in another. The story of humanity became more interconnected than ever before. So, what do we make of this? Harari argues that globalization is one of humanity's greatest contradictions. It united the world while also deepening divisions. It spread knowledge and innovation, but also injustice and inequality. Today we live in the legacy of that era. The clothes we wear, the food we eat, the languages we speak, all of it is shaped by centuries of exploration, trade, and empire. We are more connected than ever before, but that connection carries both opportunity and responsibility. And with this global web of culture and commerce came something even more profound, the power to shape the future itself. Next, let's explore how humanity turned its sights to something even more ambitious, the mastery of life and death. Welcome to the modern era, the age of wonders. Think about it. In just a few hundred years, humanity has achieved what once seemed impossible. We've conquered deadly diseases, sent humans to space, unlocked the secrets of DNA, and increased life expectancy across the globe. Life today is safer, longer, and more comfortable than ever before. But here's the paradox. Despite all this progress, we find ourselves asking some of the oldest questions in human history. Why are we here? What's the point of it all? After all our triumphs, what does it mean to live a meaningful life? Look around. We've built cities that never sleep, networks that keep us connected 24/7, and an endless stream of entertainment. But with all this noise, it's easy to feel lost. Harari argues that in this era of consumerism and technology, we're bombarded with choices and distractions. But at the core of it, many people struggle with a deep existential question. What is all this progress for? Is happiness something we can buy, download, or upgrade? And then there's the future. We stand at the edge of something profound, our ability to redesign life itself. Genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, bioenhancements, these are no longer the stuff of science fiction. They're real, and they're advancing fast. But here's the warning Harari gives. Will we control these technologies, or will they control us? Will genetic engineering make us healthier, or create a divide between the genetically privileged and the rest of humanity? Will artificial intelligence make life easier, or will it render us obsolete? Think about it. We've come from hunting mammoths with stone tools to building self-learning machines that can outthink us. But as we race toward the future, we face a fundamental challenge. How do we stay human in a world where we have the power to play God? Harari suggests that perhaps the biggest question of our time isn't what can we do, but what should we do? Because for all our advances, we're still searching for meaning, for purpose, for connection. The stakes have never been higher. So, what's next? Will we use our knowledge to build a world of peace and prosperity, or will we let our ambition unravel everything we've built? The future is wide open, and for the first time in history, we're the ones writing the ending. The story of Sapiens isn't over. It's still unfolding, written by the choices we make today. So, what kind of story will we choose to tell? Sapiens isn't just a history book, it's a thought-provoking meditation on the human journey. From our humble beginnings as foragers on the African plains to our rise as the rulers of the planet, Yuval Noah Harari shows us that the myths we create, whether religious, national, or economic, don't just reflect our world, they shape our future. But Harari leaves us with a powerful question. Now that we've become the gods of our world, able to shape life, the planet, and even our own evolution, what kind of future will we choose to create? The story of humanity is far from over. It's in our hands.